Hi, I'm Rebecca Brady, and I'm joined here today by James Pink, Vice President of Health Sciences Consulting for NSF. Thank you very much for joining me, James.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for having me.
Great. So how do you see the medical device industry pivoting to digital?
Well, I think there are several pivots that we've seen very recently. Certainly, the first is, of course, like most of us, into an environment of home working and how to actually, ensure that we're still connected together in some of the operations processes, some of the support functions, some of the quality and regulatory functions, and how in a pandemic they're able to manage their sort of day-to-day business, but remotely. So one of the first sort of major pivots that we've seen is in the sort of the IT systems, the working from home, and of course that brings with it various challenges when you have priorities such as regulatory submissions, when you're trying to work on quality system out of specification investigations, for example, or just really trying to get a batch of medical devices out there into the market and back out into the health institutions. The second is actually within the product portfolio. What we've seen is, unless the medical device manufacturers, IVD manufacturers, are specifically related to either diagnostic or therapy for COVID-19 or any similar respiratory conditions, we've seen things such as a reduction in the number of elective surgeries. We've seen that hospitals have had to completely redesign how they are delivering healthcare, and as a result that's had quite a significant impact on the industry. And of course then, with that significant impact, the organisations have looked at their product portfolios and had to pivot their portfolios so that there is some element of digital support, be it whether it's a mobile app, be it whether it's actually remote training for people who are actually using the products, or whether it's something that is augmenting an existing product from a sort of a digital medium.
Great, and you talked there about sort of the challenges there, but what has been the most considerable benefit to companies now adopting digital solutions with their existing products?
I think the benefit really is twofold. I think obviously the level of engagement that you can get in digital is very, very high. People downloading apps, people being able to access people that were potentially out there in the care environments or out there at the front line, have found themselves with a little bit more sort of not necessarily time, but a little bit more head space to be able to address some of the queries that the manufacturers have had. In terms of the product portfolio benefits, really it's because many organizations have always been strategically looking at the digital as being a solution, either in the prediction of disease or in some of the augmented therapy delivery, or of course in terms of the follow-up of some of the products that they've got out in the market. And so whilst the pandemic is very, very serious, it's very concerning, it's hitting people economically as well as within their health, the realities is that the sort of the pivot to digital has brought about this ability to be able to analyze different sources of data, different data sets, and of course be able to provide information to users in a medium that before that they were not as readily accessible. I'll give you one example. Sorry, Rebecca, but I mean, one of the examples could be in terms of sort of let's say nursing, where normally the nursing staff in a sort of in a therapy delivery outside of infectious diseases, for example, like COVID, but they would be always on the front line. There would be very little time to be able to actually sit and engage with the device manufacturers around certain topics that are affecting their devices. Whereas now with the digital pivot, the ability of the engagement at the front line in terms of user inquiries, just seeking product information is now being accelerated in ways that we've never seen before.
I think that's a really good example there, actually. And also, these pivots obviously bring challenges. So what are the regulatory challenges that these pivots are presenting?
I think the regulatory challenges are I guess there are many facets of the challenges. The first is that, of course, from a product safety perspective, when we look at physical, active, non-active medical devices, for instance, we've got a very large data set of what are the risks, what are the issues, what are the hazards and harms that can be caused as a result of those type of devices. But bringing in a digital sort of aspect to it presents new unknown risks. We obviously have begun to experience many things around cybersecurity for risks, and that, of course, was relatively prevalent when we were not in a pandemic, and when only 25% of us were actively engaged in digital technologies. Now we're up to the sort of the 80-85% mark, and of course those risks really do come to the fore. The second is on the integrity of that data. So the level of data acquisition that we're now seeing, the ability to be able to analyze that data and of course use either predictive algorithms, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all sorts of tools to be able to understand, generate, gather, analyze that data has now got new risks, because of course the ability to move from the evaluation of that data directly into the delivery of a care or into a diagnosis has really increased with the advent of these pivots that we're experiencing. I think another element, of course, from a regulatory perspective is the fact that many of these applications came through on emergency use authorizations across the world. And as a result of that, the actual level of regulatory scrutiny in some areas is not as comprehensive as it would be if this was in a sort of a routine, non-pandemic environment. And I don't know what one of those routine things are, in all honesty, but I think that ability for people to take a large breath, to be very, very methodological and methodical in their approach to what are the risks, what are the controls, are we achieving state of the art in those controls? I think many of those questions and the subsequent scrutiny has inevitably, because we were highly stressed, there was only so many resources to do this, that there's possibly a number of technological solutions that may not come up to the level of scrutiny that we would all expect under a normal regulatory regime. So I think there's a couple of things, in that do present some unique challenges for regulatory agencies and, of course, manufacturers post sort of this digital integration.
Great, thanks for that, James. You've talked quite a lot about sort of benefits and the challenges, but if you look now to the sort of the opportunities going in digital, how is that going to affect things like products and profits and even sort of productivity and people? Yeah,
I think if we sort of look at it from a product perspective, I think augmenting a sort of a therapeutic medical device with a digital twin or a digital assistant or something that is really adding benefit and augmenting that product is something that we'll see, hopefully a reduction in, for example, use errors, because there is much more active engagement in the use environment and the use case. I see that in terms of profitability, from a product perspective, we can see that the investments that companies make will be will be more data driven, and not data driven from the sort of the traditional rep going in and talking to the sort of the main clinician involved for procurement, or talking to, in the UK, for example, someone like in an NHS supply chain. But that data that they'll have obtained will be real. It will be real frontline data that will be able to shape product development, shape product improvements. And of course, if you've got a product that is really performing to your needs, and an organization that is responding to those needs, then you should see an increase in revenues because of adoptability and adoption, and you should see a reduction in costs in terms of activity-based costs around complaint handling, around failure investigation, around field safety notification. Those elements that generally do sneak up behind you and give you that element of surprise. I think if we talk about the digital pivots in production and operations, many organizations have traditionally sort of steered away. They've been quite risk averse to adopting digital technologies, for example, within operation systems or within systems that are within quality management, particularly if they have incumbent systems that they would have to inform regulators around the change. So there's always been a bit of I guess, an impedance or not a refusal as such, but it's been very, very difficult for everyone to get on board in an organisation to say, hey, let's install this new electronic batch record. You know, it would probably disrupt the organisation for 12 weeks. It would have to go through new regulatory approvals. It would cost it all of this, and the payback we're not sure. Whereas now, under sort of the working from home under COVID, you know, those situations and decisions have been made. That there isn't this sort of should we, shouldn't we? They have, and as a result of that, in an operations sense, you know, to be able to move the model away from reaction to prediction and actually watch, you know, your manufacturing trends, look at you know, your product, the processes of making that product, your supply chain and the resilience within that supply chain enables you to be a lot more predictive, and therefore you may not suffer as many out of specification results, which is really cost. You might be able to reduce your deviations, and more importantly, your insights, the data that you generate will really help inform where you have to put your hard-earned cash in terms of manufacturing improvements, you know, production operations, training, competency, and of course, you know, the next stages of automation. So I see that there is a huge opportunity in this sort of pandemic to sort of reflect on the digital strategies and see the net benefits, not just from a product but from a process perspective as well.
Yeah, the pandemic has definitely changed a lot, and it's very interesting to hear, you know, the impact it has on digital. Can you describe how NSF are assisting organisations in the switch to a digital portfolio or production?
Yeah, we've always been in the sort of the software development, the sort of the computer system validation, cybersecurity space. You know, for the last 20 years, many of myself included and my colleagues have been in and around the sort of the risk and risk controls associated with, you know, any type of software or any type of, you know, digital technology, be it whether it's the actual network or whether it's the hardware or whether it's the, you know, the actual application that's been undertaken. So NSF has a sort of a unique knowledge of the risks and the controls and the things that you have to do to give yourselves assurance that, you know, the digital adoption that you've taken, be it whether it's in manufacturing or in your product range, is being undertaken in terms of the state of the art, and that is that the organisations understand their risks, and we help them to understand what those risks are. So we have an observatory that is really looking at, you know, what are the latest cybersecurity threats, what are the latest design elements around the software that can cause, you know, either interoperability issues or integration issues, or they may just simply prohibit you from achieving what the users need based upon the software. So we really do concentrate on understanding those risks, and in our consulting engagements that we've done over the years, we've sort of honed the way of being able to deliver insights into our clients in order to be able to support them either in the design stage, by helping them understand the design development plans that are required or the regulatory strategies, all the way through to sort of the formal validation and integration of those software either into the product portfolio or into the operations.
Well, thank you so much today for joining me, James. NSF will be joining us at the MedTech Summit for the whole week. So if you have any questions for James or the rest of the NSF team, do reach out to them and have these important conversations about digital and the future of digital in your company. But for now, thank you so much, James, for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the summit.
That's great. Thank you very much, Rebecca.